Today we're going to be looking at emulating the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Color on the Nintendo DS with the Lameboy emulator. Now once I boot up Lameboy, you'll see that there's a pretty stripped down, straightforward menu, much like NES DS. You can of course go up and down to scroll through your games, or use left or right to act as kind of a page up or page down feature. I'll boot up most everyone's favorite, the original Tetris for the Game Boy. And as you can expect, the emulation of the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color is pretty good. Right up there with the NES for some of the best emulators on the DS. While Tetris does its thing, I'll show you a little bit around the menu system. To bring up the menu, all you do is touch the bottom screen. You have your save state options here. Controls. On the emulation, you can turn on the Game Boy Color options. I believe that's for certain games, older, original Game Boy games that support color. And there's Rumble. I don't know what all games support the Rumble, but on the display options, you actually, for the original Game Boy, you can toggle between like more black and white or a green tint. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but it tries to give you more of that original Game Boy feel. Of course, it can't quite, because of the screen, it's not going to be totally authentic, but if that's your thing, you can do that. You can toggle between the game being on the top or bottom screen. There's scaling. If you want the original resolution, you can go with that. I usually go for the full screen because it actually does a pretty good job of the scaling. There's a scaling filter on here too. You probably can't tell on the YouTube version, but with it off, you can tell. You can see some of the scaling artifacts, whereas with the filter on, it looks pretty smooth and does a pretty good job. Of course, you can turn the frames per second display off as well. If you want to save your settings, the next time you boot up Lameboy, it remembers those settings. You have to do it every single time. If you want to go back to the defaults, you got that option. Got log there. And if you want to go to a different ROM, hit the exit. I played around with most of the major games, and I haven't really had any complaints in terms of emulation. I've been pretty happy. It's always nice to see it on the beautiful DS screen as opposed to the good old Game Boys that we grew up with. Some of these games actually could pass for a GBA game on here. So anyway, now one of the better tests in my opinion of Game Boy, actually Game Boy Color emulation, is Shantae. Because I was actually playing this on the GP2X, and it was actually had a great deal of slowdown and sound issue, whether it be slowdown or stuttering. This is one of the later Game Boy Color releases, and it's pretty demanding in comparison to most of the other games you'll see. And as you may, I don't know if you can see it down there, but on the frames per second, most of the time it stays around in the 50 area. While most games are in about at 60 or so, Every now and then you'll see it dip down to 40 when there's a lot of action, and the sound will slow down a little bit. You may see this later on. Whether it be the explosions or something like that. I'm sucking playing like this. And actually, this is how slow she walks, so that's not slow down in the game itself, but so anyway, I was pretty happy with that. You notice that there's a lot of stuttering when I pause and unpause. It almost seems like the sound is one of the more demanding things in this game. Unless it's just the way the emulation handles it. But like I said, overall I've been pretty happy with this. I can't think of too many complaints. I like the menu system better than on NES DS, which had more of a focus on using a stylus, which isn't handy because you don't usually have your stylus out when you're playing Nintendo games. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I think that wraps up this review.